online sound. We are doing the online sound check. We're good.
Habari za want to officially start. Good morning and welcome everyone who's joining us here, and good morning, afternoon, and evening to those who are joining us online. My name is Joyce Kinyanjui from Zizi Afrique and a member of the Learning and Action Alliance on Girls Agency, an initiative connected to the Center for Universal Education, CUE, at the Brookings Institution. In addition to welcoming you this morning, I will be your MC for this plenary session. Now, welcome, karibuni, to this symposium to discuss how we can transform education systems in a time of disruptions and shifting power. We wish to learn more today as we meet in this hall and in the breakaway rooms later, to learn more on collaborative research and action from an African perspective. So we want to see what does collaborative research and action look like in this part of the world. Now, this Nairobi Symposium is part of the Global Symposium Series of 2026 and builds on the collaborative work of Knowing Doing Network. And this network is a part of the Brookings Institution. Now, this particular symposium is co-hosted and co-designed. So we've been planning for many months, several months, and the co-hosts are An Giang University in Vietnam, the Center for Universal Education at Brookings, Educate Sierra Leone, Educación para Compartir, I hope I've pronounced it well, Mizizi Elimu Africa Foundation, Society for Access to Quality Education, and you can clap again, Vocês da Educação. So this morning I want to recognize the co-hosts who are here. Some of them are here, some are joining us online. So I will start with my fellow co-host, Dr. Morris Mutisia from Mizizi Elimu Africa. So, and maybe I can request the other members from Mizizi Elimu Africa to stand. Yeah, so these are, you can mark any of them. They will be assisting us in any movement, in just ensuring that everything goes well. Then also, I want to recognize Jennifer, Dr. Jennifer Donohue from CUE. And kindly, the team from CUE, if you could stand. So these are the other co-hosts. So welcome. And then we have Miriam Mason Sise and Mr. Fode Kaloko from Sierra Leone. Kindly stand. So this is the team from Sierra Leone. So those are the co-host. So we've actually, it's a collaboration between the three you've seen and the rest that I read out. Now you may be asking yourself why we are here today. So today's discussion will be guided by two questions only. So the first question we want to discuss today is, what do children and young people need to thrive? What do they need for them to thrive, not just in school, but later in life? Then secondly, how can education ecosystem better support this? So throughout the day, through dialogue, workshops, and shared learning, participants will engage with examples from across the continent and beyond, exploring what it takes to shift power, strengthen collaboration, and transform education system in ways that are both contextually relevant and globally connected. We would have desired to have everyone introduce themselves, but 10 may not allow us to do this. However, we wish to acknowledge some of our guests who have traveled from outside the country to this symposium. So if you flew in from outside the country, we kindly ask you to wave so that we can be able to see you. So that's the team. So the representation is from more than 12 countries are represented here. As we interact throughout the day, I hope that the following two things will happen. One, that today we'll add our voice to the global conversation that centers local knowledge and priorities. And if we are able to do that, then we begin discussing shifting power. And then secondly, that each one of us, you will leave today with a new perspective, a new question, and a new connection. So once again, welcome. So at this point, it's now my pleasure to invite Dr. Maurice Mutisia, the Deputy Executive Director, responsible for research, knowledge, and impact at Mizizi Elimu Africa Foundation, to share his remarks with us. Maurice, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thanks, Joyce, and good morning, everyone. Habari ya asubuhi. Tuko salama. I hope our friends and our colleagues that are coming from outside Nairobi and Tanzania will learn a bit of Swahili. And I also hope I'll be able to learn a bit of Spanish from my Peru people. Hola. And the Portuguese who are here. And I think the different languages that are represented here, I'm excited to see people also from India in this convening. So I'm just going to take you through about Mizizi Elimu Africa and what we do. And I will also take a minute or two to introduce two colleagues from the ministry, from the government, who will also comment about one or two things, and then they'll be able to transition to the next speaker. So for those who know us, we are formerly known as Zizi Africa Foundation, but now we transition to Mizizi Elimu Africa. And we think the name is embedded in what we try to do, focusing on education. Elimu, Jennifer, Elimu means education. Yes. And Africa is written with a K when you write it in Swahili. So our vision is that all children and youth in Africa have the foundations to learn, relate, and thrive. And as you're aware, there is a lot of research that has been done in terms of getting to know where we are, not only within Kenya, but also within the region, in terms of where our children are when it comes to learning. And just to speak, and I think this just, music to the ears, because you are all aware of this, is that for far too long, children are unable to read with comprehension and lack. And they also don't have the numeracy proficiency. Part of the work that we have done is we have realized almost 80% of the learners that are in grade 3, they are still stuck on the abstracts. They have not really moved in terms of how they can be able to solve maths to a level whereby there is concrete, there is mastery. Still using manipulatives. But more important is also, when you look on the education system, it means that they are progressing through an education system, and at the end of the day, they are not able to, to thrive the way they are supposed to be. It means that it's also rippling now back to the world of work. But more importantly is that side there, that the persistent learning gaps are not merely learner level challenges. Because if we are able to support learners within the classroom the way they are supposed to be supported, and the environment is good, they will be able to learn. So what you've been able to find is that they reflect broader system constraints and challenges. And I think that sets the foundation where we are here today. When you start thinking about collaboration, research, and action, it means it's not just evidence that can be able to drive change, but rather looking on how that can be in a very embedded within an ecosystem so that we can be able to influence change. So part of the work that we have done, we have been in collaborations, we have been coalitions, and we have learned 5 lessons that I think they're also central to the reason why we are today. And part of that is when you think about education reforms, And if you think about long-lasting educational reforms, the first thing, and we have gone for those who are in Kenya and some of other countries, there are exemplar countries that are coming in, and we have had in Brazil what we call the Sobral model in terms of improving learning. And one thing that we have learned out of all this engagement and learning is that when you think about educational reforms, they begin with people. And that's central. They must begin with someone, whether within the government or outside the government. The second thing is that it moves from an individual to collective efforts. And that centers why we are here today. If you're able to transform systems, even if you have an idea, you won't move that idea alone, it would never head anywhere. But you bring other people and that connect to the idea, then you're moving somewhere. But more importantly, they must be government-led. We need to find a way. How do we embed them within the government systems? How do we get the government to be part of that idea, to be part of that reform? But what does that really mean? It means at the end of the day, because we tend to implement programs and projects, then it means whatever you learn is already ingrained within the system. And the other is the civil society as it relates change. So now you begin an individual and you are collective and your civil societies and other people, but now you move it and leave the government to be able to lead it and try to accelerate where it's possible. And then the other one is scale and equity must be designed from the start. I think that's more important. So with that, then, and coming from that background, Mrs. Elimu Africa, we aimed by 2040 to impact about 10 million learners across 10 countries. And the other thing is our work focuses on around 3 major goals. One is about strengthening foundational skills. The second is about reforming education systems. And the last is about building ecosystems that sustain change. And I'm happy to be here today because this is part of that ecosystem of players. And this, when you talk about strong education system, that ecosystems that sustain change, it means working with others, but also working with and within the government. I think when you look on the reason I put that logo here is because it has 3, if you look on our logo, it has 3 roots, and they stand for literacy, numeracy, and values and life skills. No, I think it's okay. So our area of focus is around literacy, numeracy, life skills, and values. That's how we translate our foundational skills to be. And we implement quite a number of programs. But I want to just talk about the significant ones. And you'll have some time today to be able to listen to some of these. We'll have a session around action for values and life skills, where we'll be able to dig deep about that initiative and how collaboration has been into that. The secondly, harnessing education research for impact in Africa. We'll also have a session that will be able to speak about that and collaboration, which in terms of centering the African-led knowledge and leadership in terms of research for impact. And then one thing that as an organization we have also tried to do, working with actors, is providing those spaces that are instrumental for learning and sharing. And most of you participate in what we call the education evidence workshop, but then we're also part of coalitions that are here, so that you can be able to drive, that collective impact within our education system. Then I think I may end up with this, is that we'll also have an opportunity in one of the sessions to listen. One thing that we have been able to learn is also, collaboration comes with the principles. There are issues of trust. There are issues, understanding and having a common goal. So one of the key things and a framework that you have tried to create is a framework that has 9 principles of collaborations that we believe if they can be able to drive when you talk about collective impact, when you talk about collectivity, when you talk about people working together for a better cause. I think just to end it with here, and I think she has talked about the people that are here. We have the civil society organization, quite a number of them, the government, the academia. We have funders that are also sitting here today, teachers and education leaders. We have think tanks, multilaterals, representation networks. But more important, that we have over 12 nationalities that are sitting together. So that means a lot when it comes to thinking about collaboration, collectivity, and thinking about putting to all those experiences that we have into action. So thank you so much. I'll let it there. But then I'm going to invite Nelly Machu from, where is Nelly? From Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. She'll make a remark. And then after that, I'll be inviting Yakudi from Kipra to also make a remark. Nelly, please.
whether. Thank you. Of curriculum development, and I'm glad to be here. At KICD to develop curriculum and curricular support materials that are informed by research. That is very, very critical, that we don't just sit and just wake up and say, today we have a curriculum for this level. And we have several levels. We have the pre-primary and primary levels. We have the junior school levels. We have the senior school right now as we are implementing. We are at the senior school level. But then what informs us actually is research, so that as we are going into development of the curriculum, then we well understand that there are gaps and needs by the society that we need to address, so that at the end of the day, the kind of outcomes that we are achieving are also helping us to achieve what we call our societal aspirations, or what we call our educational goals. You remember the 8 goals? The national goals of education. So we really ask ourselves, what is this that we need to do as we improve? And so how do we improve? By making sure that we do research so that we are able to improve. And I'd like to say that we are really grateful for Mizizi Elimu Africa. We started this journey when it was Zizi Elimu Zizi Africa Foundation, and now it is Mizizi Elimu Africa. But I just want to say that we are very grateful as KICD, because the journey that we have walked together, the timely kind of collaboration, when we were doing the reforms, remember competency-based education from the former system, we have really walked the journey with us. But one key thing that has stood out is the fact that we have a shared responsibility. And the shared responsibility is about, a shared responsibility and a vision that what is this that we want to see among our children? It is not just about the academic achievement that we've been looking at, but again, looking at how then do we ensure learners are able to develop life skills and also to nurture values, so that we are able to address the kind of issues that we're suffering as a society, because transformation starts from education. It starts from the curriculum. And so the kind of collaboration that we have had have really helped us a great way and a great deal to be able to achieve our vision for CBE, or for competency-based education, which is about nurturing or having an empowered, an engaged, and an ethical citizen. So thank you so much for this. Be blessed.
Thanks, Nelly. And I think she'll be facilitating a session. If you want to know about value-based education and how collaboration really means in terms of, standardizing reforms within government, kindly, I know people have registered. I don't want to lobby. You can look for her. Bwana Nyakunde.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morris. My name is Gideon Nyakundi. I'm a senior policy analyst at the Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis, that is KIPRA. And have been sent here by my boss, the Executive Director, KIPRA, to give remarks on her behalf. She was to join us, but due to exigencies of duty, she may be able to join us in the course of the day. So please allow me to go straight into her remarks. So I will read as sent to me. Good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, development partners, researchers, educators, youth representatives, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of KIPRA, I am delighted to join you today and extend our sincere appreciation to Mizizi Elimu Africa, the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institution, and all other partners for convening this important symposium. We commend the organizers for creating a platform that brings together policymakers, researchers, practitioners, academia, civil society, development partners, and young people to collectively reflect on how research and collaboration can transform the education system in Kenya. KIPRA is a public policy think tank mandated to provide objective, evidence-based policy advice to the government. both the national and the county governments in Kenya. Through objective research, policy analysis, data analytics, and stakeholder engagement, we support the formulation and implementation of policies that promote sustainable and inclusive socio-economic development. At Kipra, we firmly believe that education is one of the most important investments a country can make. It is the foundation of developing human capital, enhancing productivity, fostering innovation, reducing poverty and inequality, and accelerating sustainable economic growth. A well-functioning education system equips citizens with the knowledge, skills, and the competencies needed to participate effectively in increasing digital, knowledge-driven, and globally competitive economy. Kenya has made a remarkable progress over the past 2 decades in expanding access to education through policies such as the free primary education, the free day secondary education, and more recently, the competence-based education. Enrollment levels have increased substantially. Gender parity has also improved substantially. And investments in digital learning infrastructure has also expanded opportunities for learners across the country. However, the gains must now be complemented by sustained efforts to improve learning outcomes, education quality, equity, system efficiency, and the relevance of education to the needs of the labor market. Despite these achievements, the education sector continues to face several complex challenges. Learning inequalities persist across regions and socioeconomic groups. Foundational literacy and numeracy outcomes remain uneven. Teacher capacity and the resource constraints continue to affect the quality, while rapid technological constraints continue to affect quality as well. Addressing these challenges require more than good intentions. It requires a sound public policy grounded in credible evidence, high quality data, and high quality data. In Kenya's context, policy decisions increasingly depend on reliable administrative data, learning assessment, household surveys, labor market information, and rigorous policy research. Data enables us to understand where the disparities exist, identify what interventions work, and allocate resource, the scarce public resources more efficiently. This is why collaboration between researchers and policymakers is important. Evidence has the greatest impact when it is co-produced, communicated effectively, and translated into practical policy actions. Platforms such as today's symposium provide invaluable opportunity to bridge the traditional gap between research, policy, and practice, ensuring that education reforms are informed by both evidence and the lived realities of the learners and the educators here. Kipra is pleased to be part of the collaborative agenda. Together with Mizizi Africa and other stakeholders, we are currently supporting the costing of education reforms in Kenya to provide policymakers with robust evidence on the financial implications, sustainability, and the prioritization of the key reforms. This work reflects our shared commitment to ensuring that education policies are not only ambitious and transformative, but also financially realistic, implementable, and sustainable over the long term. In addition, we continue to undertake the comprehensive education sector analysis that examine the education financing and learning outcomes, skills development, and the labor market alignment, governance, as well as emerging policy issues to inform decision-making at both national and county levels. As we engage in today's discussions, let us continue to strengthen partnerships that leverage on collective expertise and experience. By combining research, reliable data, innovative thinking, and meaningful collaboration, we can develop education policies that are responsive, to today's challenges while preparing our children and the young people for the opportunities of tomorrow. KIPRA remains committed to working with government, development partners, and research institutions, civil society, and organizations to generate high-quality evidence, strengthen policy dialogue, and also support education reforms that improve learning outcomes to contribute to Kenya's long-term socioeconomic transformation. Thank you, and I wish you all productive and insightful deliberations.
Thank you. This one is officially opened for us to to engage. But I think the question that comes in, how does collaboration with government also really look like? And how does that really be able to drive, the research agenda, drive actions, but also drive, the practices within that are changing and transforming how education is being implemented. So we invite you today to engage. Feel free to be able to contribute. I think most of the sessions that you are going to have, there are sessions that we need people to just come in with an open mind, contribute, talk, discuss, and share. That's how we can be able to grow the ideas that we have to a very sustainable manner. Thank you so much, and I think I'll invite the next speaker. Joyce.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sode Kaloko. I'm the program coordinator for education quality at AKCLU. Yeah. So I have a short story to tell you. A few months ago, I met a student who missed several days of school. Like many adults, my first instinct was to wonder, what is the matter with this child? Why isn't this child not coming to school? But when we gave the student the opportunity to tell us his own story, everything changed. He wasn't staying home because he did not value education. He was staying home because some mornings there was no food, no transport, and when he eventually arrived late, he expected to be punished. This conversation reminded us about something simple but profound. Before we solve problems for young people, we must first learn from them. And that is what exactly our research sets out to do. So today what I'm going to share with you is a simple shift from researching young people to researching with young people. And that has helped us in terms of understanding a very serious challenge that we are facing in our country, CLE, student absenteeism. So through collaborative research with young people, we are able to uncover a lot of things surrounding student absenteeism. And it all starts with recognizing who understand the challenges about that. So why do we think youth agency matters? For us, we often think that as adults, we understand the problems surrounding student absenteeism or the other challenges affecting young people. But very often, the students themselves understand the problems affecting them more than we do. For us to be able to support students and for them to be able to flourish as young people, we should be able to listen to them, and then by listening to them, that will help us to change a lot of the challenges facing them. But listening alone is the start of the journey. So what we did as an organization, we recruited students as researchers. So instead of researching young people, we put them on board to be part of the journey in researching about young people. And then we also took them in the journey of knowledge creation. So we created knowledge together with them by sharing their own experiences and gathering insights around student absenteeism. And then they become change agents themselves. So student absenteeism is the start of the cause in changing the dynamics in our society. So what we uncover with this is that there is a lot of finger pointing when it comes to student absenteeism. Parents are pointing fingers at the children. Children are pointing fingers at teachers by saying they are not good lessons, and parents are saying the teachers themselves are not also preparing good lessons that will make the students engage. So what we are doing is we are unpacking the root causes of absenteeism through student-led research and also by listening to communities. And listening, we all know, is a very serious, it's one of the most challenging skills of human beings. So for us, listening to communities and also putting the students at the center of research became part of our journey. So what did young people tell us? So in terms of student absenteeism, we uncovered that financial barriers are one of the serious challenges affecting student absenteeism. And then we also discover from the research that food security is a very serious challenge affecting student absenteeism. And weather also came out to be a serious challenge that students identify through their colleagues. Is a very serious factor again affecting student absenteeism. I'll give you an example of when they say weather is a serious challenge. So for us, many students have to walk miles away to access school. So if they are walking miles away to access school, if the weather is bad for them for a day, they'll not be able to access school. So that is a cause of absenteeism. So what we are learning from collaborating with you, students are missing school because of structural forces. And very often again, students are not clear how much school they miss. And when they miss school, they are often punished or they have to pay a fine. And a fine in this case is not something official. A fine is something that some of the schools are just instituting as a way of punishing students. If you don't come to school, you give this amount of money, and that itself is also contributing to student absenteeism. So we have shifted from telling families and students where they are falling short to listening to their perspectives. So listening has become the center of what we are doing as an organization, because the more you listen to people, the more more you listen to families, the more you listen to students, the more you uncover things that you are not knowledgeable about. So what are some of the consequences of missing school? I've mentioned some of them. So some of the consequences of missing school, in terms of the impact of learning, some students say that they lag behind with their peers whenever they miss school. Just going to summarize. So what do young people believe will work? One, they recommended that there should be clear communication between parents and educators. I mean teachers, the school leaders, because when there is a clear communication between teachers, parents, and then the students, that will help all parties to contribute to solutions that are going to solve the problem. And also, a clear recommendation from students is that they are saying that there should be improvement in lessons, engagement, and support. Because from the root causes that we uncover, poor lessons are also a cause of student absenteeism. So what this research is doing for us is that there's now a culture of listening to families and communities in the ecosystem. So what we are also doing is that we are trying to build a movement of positioning families and then you as researchers, and also in terms of radically including all the stakeholders that are needed in improving education outcomes. So we are moving from So this research has helped us in moving from one district where we conducted the research to 8 districts where we are rolling out some of these ideas, and then this is also making a lot of changes in those communities. So in terms of my closing remarks, I'm going to close with this. This research wasn't really about absenteeism alone. It is about what becomes possible when young people are trusted as partners in understanding problems and designing solutions. So knowledge is strongest when it is created with young people, not simply about them. And when research is shared, power is distributed, and learning is collective, education systems become better, and education systems become better equipped to help every young person thrive. We must trust young people as partners in knowledge creation and create an environment where everybody feels listened to and then trusted. Thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone. Can you hear me well? Hi everyone, my name is Valeria Duarte Romero. I'm the Senior Research Coordinator at Enseña Perú. Enseña Perú is a non-profit organization that works towards education transformation in Peru. So I'm joining today's conversation from South America. So first of all, dear Joyce and Maurice, perfect Spanish, by the way. I understood it very well, so thank you so much for that. And second, I'm very grateful to be here, not only because I hope that I will be able to contribute from the things that we are learning from Peru, but also from Latin America, but also, and most important, because I'm very excited and curious to learn from the experiences, from the questions, and from the conversations that we're going to have today here. And this space is to center the conversation towards young people themselves. And many of the people that are here, maybe we work very closely to the education system. Some of us maybe are very related to the system change work. Some of us maybe works in schools, some of us works in philanthropy, in research, or in different aspects. And also, I think that most of us will have our own experiences towards educations as students, as teachers, as parents, or members of our communities. So we carry our own experiences around education. But before we open today's conversation around transformation, around skills, around thriving, we wanted to center the conversation in 3 questions. What are young people actually experiencing in the education system today? What do they say they need? How often do we listen to them? And also, how well are education system creating opportunities for them to learn what matters? And that's why we wanted to, we did an informal poll to explore the question that you are seeing in the PPT. And we asked that question to young people. And before knowing the response that my partner Nancy is going to present, I want to explore the question with you as well. I think that we've listened to many important voices today, and it's important to start sharing with us. So I want to propose a small dynamic. First of all, we will see in the slides 2 questions. The first one is a question we ask young people in this poll, but we want to start by asking yourselves as well. And we have the first one: which skills do you think students need most to be successful in the future? We don't believe there are correct or incorrect answers, but you can read the options, and I want you to start thinking about what would be your response from the role that you are here, but also from the experience that you had towards the education system, but also the things that you are watching today. And once you have identified your answer for question number 1, I would like for you to share with your table the answer for the question number 2. Are schools teaching these skills today?
are going to watch this later. But then I don't want to read the captions for you guys, at least for you to hear from them directly. And it's still not working. So I'd like to end this session, and I'll leave you with one take-home point, that we've seen the results and young people clearly know what they need to succeed. But systemic barriers are preventing them from developing those skills. So what can you do in the room, right? So thank you so much. I'll hand it back to you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Are you hearing me okay? I have a different microphone, so I just want to make sure it's working. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you to Nancy, to Valeria, to Fode, to Maurice, to Joyce, to our colleagues from the Ministry of Education, from Kipra, to all of you for being here. I want to welcome you again, although this is not my home, but I am a guest in this home. But I do come from one of the co-hosting organizations, and I'm just really excited to be here and to be able to look out and to see so many of you who are known and are existing partners, and so many of you who we hope will become closer partners today and as the years go on. My name is Jennifer O'Donoghue. I am a senior fellow and Deputy Director at the Center for Universal Education, which we call CUE. So if you haven't heard of that acronym, by the end of today, you hopefully will know what CUE means. So on behalf of my colleagues at CUE, many of whom are here today, it is really, again, my great pleasure to welcome you to this space, to this conversation, to be in community together today. I am here with deep gratitude that I have been able over the past 5 years to engage deeply with colleagues here in Kenya and across the African continent to really, whoa. I thought I was hearing voices for a second. Anyways, I was just saying that I have really been able and privileged to be able to engage with folks here in Kenya, in other parts of Africa, and to learn through this approach that we call collaborative research and action that I'm going to talk more about in just a second, and you've been hearing about it already. Just again to recognize this symposium is the third in a series of symposiums. We will be doing 5 in total. So we had one in Washington, D.C. in April, one in Mexico City in June. We are here today in Nairobi. We will be in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam in August, and then back in the U.S. in New York around the UNGA UN General Assembly meetings in September. So, really this is what we wanted to build, was an around the world symposium that recognizes that this work of systemic change is happening on the ground all over the world, and that in order to really be able to meaningfully talk about it, we need to be in all of these different spaces. We need to come together in community and be able to continue to learn and to strengthen the work that we are doing together. This symposium is built off of the collaborative research and action of the Knowing Doing Network. You can see we have one sign over there right now. There are many folks here. I believe we have 25 members of the Knowing Doing Network here today, as Joyce and Maurice mentioned, from 12 different countries around the world, many of them on the African continent, but also folks like Valeria joining from South America, myself joining from North America, and others who are joining from Asia and other parts of the world. So just really excited to be here, and also want to extend a really huge gratitude and thanks again to Joyce Kinyanjui, to Maurice Mutisia, and your colleagues. I don't know all of the names of all of the people from Mizimi Elimu who've been involved in organizing today, to Miriam Maison Sesai, to Fode Kaloka from Educate Sierra Leone, and to Arushi Sharma, Imogene Johnson, who's not here today but hopefully is watching us, and Wafa Abedin from the Brookings Institution in the United States. And this is really the core group of people who have made it possible for all the rest of us to be here today. So I want to ask actually for another applause of recognition to that coordinating group. Okay, now I'm a little nervous about the technical challenges that I may experience in a moment. We are here, as you have heard others say already, to explore a key lesson from our work over the past 2 decades, and that is really this idea that when research is shared, power is distributed, and learning is collective, then change both in and through education become not just possible, but more relevant and more lasting. This work matters to me. I like to start a bit from the personal by talking about, I feel now I'm too loud. Why this work matters to me personally. As we all know, we're living in a moment where we have many forces in the world. I just left Washington, D.C. 2 days ago. We're probably one of the largest forces in the world, trying to divide people, trying to set people against one another. And we are convinced through the work that we do that the only response to this alternative way of working more visible. So today we're surrounded by people in this room, and each one of us works with people outside of this room who are really working together to learn, to take action, and trying to transform education. And I think a key question for all of us is, how do we ensure that this work that we are doing together day after day, that these efforts that are deeply grounded in real contexts, real lives, real experiences, how can these be the things that shape the narratives, shape the policies, shape the practices, shape the use of our resources, and not some of this other noise that occupies a lot of the conversation. So I just want to invite you again and recognize that we are in this community that around the world has included more than 1,000 people so far who have come together in these spaces at the events that I mentioned being held around the world. And we hope, as I'm going to repeat what Joyce said, but we hope that really a goal for us is that each one of us can leave here with a new perspective, a new question, and a new connection. And this is the work of collaborative research and action. We are all of us in process all of the time, and let today be another moment for us of that process and that progress. So now I will move forward with the technical part. I am going to talk about a living and a lived framework for collaborative research and action. So this is really meant to lay out the framework for collaborative research and action to transform education systems. This really underlies the work that we have been doing and that you'll hear about for the rest of the day through the Knowing Doing Network and in other spaces and through other networks. I'll start with a short presentation, then we'll have a panel of folks who will be talking about this a little bit more deeply, so you can get a sense of how this is lived by different people around the world. Now to the technical part. Okay, so far so good. Almost from our very beginnings at CUE, CUE was founded in 2002, and we have been working with partners from around the world. But I'm going to borrow a line from my colleague Mary Otieno, who's here, who talks about awakening the memory. So want to awaken our memory a bit and take us back to October of 2022, so almost 4 years ago, where we launched a project called the Knowing Doing Network. At that point, we said we had 3 goals for that. We really wanted to bring together different bodies of work that we had within CUE and the Brookings Institution on Education together under one umbrella and think about what is the shared vision of that work. How do we define that? Then, as I mentioned, we'd long been working with partners, but we wanted to weave together all of these different networks and coalitions and task forces into what we call a network of networks, or a social impact network. And how could we think about how we could have this network of networks that is explicitly focused on this piece around systemic transformation and collaborative knowledge creation. And then finally, we wanted all of this to promote coordinated action to catalyze systemic change. So this is sort of laying out the goal. Then first step was a shared vision. My colleague Arushi took the lead on really bringing people together. We had consultations, conversations, meetings, surveys with people around the world, and really trying to think about what could we agree on that is the big framing for what we're all trying to do. So we're all doing work that is contextualized, it's in different communities, it might have a different focus within that, but what is the one thing that holds us all together? And through that process, we arrived at the shared narrative that I think Maurice actually, I hadn't seen Maurice's slides until this morning, but is very aligned with the work of Mzizi Elimu. And that is this, this is a summary. Education systems do not systematically guarantee relevant learning, especially in contexts of greater marginalization. As a result of that, too many children and young people do not develop what they need to thrive. We sometimes think of this as skills. We sometimes think of this as knowledge. I've lately started saying SKIBRO, which is my version of skills, knowledge, beliefs, relationships, and opportunities. But really, it's an agreement that they're not developing this package of things that they need in order to thrive. And then we agreed that what is needed is no longer incremental change. Incremental change will not get us where we need to go. Incremental change will not respond to the needs of young people today. We need a fundamental rethinking of the purpose of education itself, and then to rebuild systems around that purpose. So systems transformation. So that is our sort of shared vision. Then step 2, we work on this piece around the network of networks. So at the same time that we're working on the vision, we began to weave together the networks. This is about strengthening relationships, promoting new connections, encouraging dialogue, designing new research together, coordinating many work meetings and learning exchanges. And when I say many, I mean many, many. Many of you have been in those work meetings online. One network that I'm in, we had 48 Zoom meetings in 1 year. So this is a lot of conversation, a lot of time together to really strengthen relationships, because we recognize that's at the core of the work that we do. And we also created a platform or a home. This is a meeting point. I encourage you to use the QR code here. You can also ask us later, and we'll be giving more information about the KDN. But this is a platform where everyone can come together. Everyone is welcome. Every one of you, please join the KDN if you are interested. That's really a space where people who identify with this vision of transforming systems, who want to come together to learn from peers. And then finally, we really wanted to think about this piece around what does it mean to catalyze systemic change, and how do we start to lay that out? And so, working on this idea of purpose, bringing together folks in network really helped to renew the focus of our work, and that being around, catalyzing systemic transformation that centers young people, that explicitly focuses on dismantling inequity. That's in structures, but also in relationships, also in mindsets, and that promotes adaptivity and responsiveness. I think the main thing today is we know there's not one solution, right? What we need is to be able to learn to adapt, because there is complexity and multifaceted crises that seem to change on a day-to-day basis. So that is the focus of our work. This is a framework that will probably not be new to many of you, that guides our work as well. And this is just to say that when we're talking about systemic transformation, we work at a structural level. So we think about the policies, the practices, the use of resources, but we don't stop there. And we recognize that transformative change requires that we also understand and seek to shift relationships, power dynamics, and very critically, mindsets. And again, you saw that as well in Maurice mentioned that this morning. So this is something we're all in that process of changing mindsets. So our approach to respond to all of this is what we call collaborative research and action. This is an approach that brings together partners across geographies, across sectors, across roles, across generations, across experiences and perspectives, to share power, to share expertise, to share resources, share our lived experiences. And doing this, we co-create research and action. And this means for us, first and foremost, co-defining the questions. So we don't come in, someone from the outside says, this is your question, now do some research. We come together, we think critically, we think, what is the question? Let's start there. Then we co-define, co-design our methodologies, and then build knowledge together by applying these methodologies in diverse contexts and coming together again in these networks and global spaces, so that we can learn from what we're doing in many different contexts around the world. And collectively, we're trying to ensure that this evidence-based, community-rooted priorities, perspectives, and solutions inform policy dialogues across all different levels, from subnational to national, regional, and global. And importantly, this is not top-down and it's not bottom-up. It's really about how do we bring together people who are working across all of these levels to be in conversation, to be learning from one another, and to ensure that this movement is happening across all of these multiple levels. So that's the approach, and this is now the framework. And unfortunately, I can't see the bottom part of this, but I will tell you what it is. So I'm going to build the framework across the screen here, but we start on this side. Thank you. These are what we do. So what does collaborative research and action look like? What does it mean? We do certain things. We do research. That's in the name. We develop tools based on that research. We convene relevant actors in dialogue around the research. Today is an example of that. We engage in ongoing learning through networks and other peer-to-peer learning opportunities. We have learning exchanges. We have a knowledge repository where everyone is invited to share the knowledge products that they've been working on at our website that I mentioned before for the Knowing Doing Network. And finally, we advance change through shared efforts across countries, across regions to shape national and subnational policies, as well as regional and global agendas, funding priorities, and norms. So these are our activities. And then through these activities, we work to strengthen ecosystems. So as Maurice already laid out earlier, education systems transformation depends ultimately on people, the people within the systems. So our framework looks to understand and strengthen what we call the 3 C's. These are the 3 C's here. If you can see them, I see some of you have, there's like a 4-pager that should be out there that you should have gotten that talks about this a bit more. But the first C, and this is in no specific order, but the first one is capacity. And this really asks the question of, are relevant actors able to promote change, and what would help them to do that? And importantly, this is not just about individuals. We hear a lot of capacity building, and that's people getting skills. But when we talk about capacity here, we're really looking across systems and institutions to make sure that the people in the system have what they need in order to be able to act. The second C is commitment. Do relevant actors want to promote that change, and what would motivate them to do that? And the third C is cohesion, and that is there a clear and shared understanding of the change and what is needed to promote that change across the system, and what would help to strengthen that? And these 3 elements are mutually reinforcing. High commitment impacts, fuels cohesion. Cohesion enables collective capacity, and growing capacity can create conditions for renewed commitment. So they move in relationship to one another. And the focus here is not on sort of mandating a solution, but how do you cultivate a living ecosystem that learns, that evolves, and that endures to drive sustainable change? And then finally here, the ultimate outcome we hope is this transformation of systems, which I mentioned before, is all of those different levels of policies, practices, resource flows, relationships, power dynamics, and mindsets. So we put this all together. This is what we call our pathway to change. And at the beginning of this presentation, I said that this was living and lived. And so for what this has meant for us is that we have seen this take shape in so many different ways, in so many different contexts. And what we wanted to do today, is to bring folks together who have been doing this work, to be in conversation with one another, to sort of unpack for us what this has meant. And so for that, I am going to welcome to the stage my colleague, Emily Markovich-Morris, who's going to moderate the conversation, as well as Nancy Gikandi, Mohammed Saeed, and Ellen Chigwanda. So thank you, everyone.
So 30 years later, I'm still learning, and I'm grateful to my colleagues Fode, who I continue to do research with, to Eshe and Mohammed from Zanzibar, Tanzania, and to Nandipa, who's here from South Africa. So the journey continues. And I'm going to introduce you to 3 colleagues that have been doing the work, and they're going to talk about how they're digging into the work of collaborative research and action. We have Ellen Chegwanda, joining us from Zimbabwe, who has over 25 years of experience in adolescent girls' education, gender and climate change programming, and currently leads a collaborative research partnership between CARE Zimbabwe and the Center for Universal Education at Brookings, spanning 8 organizations across 5 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa. She will be highlighting experiences from partnerships in a 2-year study on innovative approaches to climate education for adolescents and youth across Kenya, Malawi, Rwanda, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. So thank you, Ellen. And we have Nancy Gikande, who we've heard from already today, and is doing great work as a research and development manager at Dignitas, an education NGO based here in Nairobi that empowers schools and educators in marginalized communities through training and coaching. She leads the research work at Digitas and is overseeing studies to generate evidence to inform education policy and practice, and has also been very involved in the competency-based curriculum work that you've heard earlier from our colleagues from Nelly Machu that you heard about, and has been working in collaboration with Kenyan Education Management Institute, working with educators in coaching and mentoring. So welcome to Nancy. And we have Mohammed Said, who's joining us from Zanzibar, Tanzania, and is the director of community-based organization in Zanzibar, Panje Project, that empowers girls and boys in swimming and youth leadership. He also started as a youth researcher a decade ago, working with me on a longitudinal study where we've been following children from preschool in 2006 to now when they're in their 20s to see factors that keep them in school and push them out of school. So Mohammed and I have been working together for a long time and has been doing great work also with our family engagement work with our colleagues at Maleli Zanzibar Foundation, Eshe, who is here as well. So we are going to get into our first question. We're going to hear from every person on the panel about what makes collaborative research collaborative. What is the secret sauce from your perspective? And from the research that you've had an opportunity to engage with and work on, what percentage would you say is actually feels collaborative? And so I'm going to start with Nancy.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. So let me start by sharing about a network we've been part of for the last 3 years now. And this is the Network for Education Systems Transformation. It was launched formally here in Nairobi, Kenya. And this network brings together 10 Global South CSOs, and the 11th one happens to be the Center for Universal Education, and they've been supporting us within the network. And this network came together to understand and catalyze education systems transformation for a breadth of skills. So when you think about breadth of skills, think of unlimited skills. And so we began the journey with a lot of code designing, which is the first secret sauce. Here in Kenya, the whole week, just thinking about what do we want to learn? What do we want to research on? And we came up with a question, of course, a lot of iterations, so much ideas that came from that engagement. And we came up with the question that we saw earlier on, how well are education systems creating opportunities for children and youth to learn what matters? And that in itself tells you that the Center for Universal Education did not come with that question. We created that question together. And that has evolved over time. We have been, I should have said that it's been this network has been co-led by the organizations. So that means that we define what we want to learn, we define what we want to research on. There's a lot of diversity because we have different countries that are represented there, from Africa, from Southeast Asia, from Latin America. And so that means we each carry different, support different education systems. And so we have been doing a lot of research, which meant digging into our education systems to answer that question. And that has evolved into so much more, and we've been able to learn more about what learning opportunities are needed, what the purpose of education is, and whether the youth actually engaged in defining what should matter in education. So my answer is co-designing, and a lot of trust goes into that. And we've spent a lot, and you've seen even the presentation. We've had series of meetings and learning networks where we are building those connections so that we can continue working together better. Yeah.
Thank you. Handing now to Ellen to say a little bit. What's the secret sauce, Ellen?
Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here this morning to share a few perspectives around our experience as CARE Zimbabwe on collaborative research. And on behalf of CARE Zimbabwe, we are very excited to be a partner of choice for the Center for Universal Education, and to have led the Education and Climate Work Stream for CUE for the past 2 years, and collaborating with 8 partners coming from 5 countries, including Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. And so when you look at collaborative research and what this meant, and resonating really with some of the perspectives that Nancy already shared, the biggest piece for us was trust building. I think that was the secret sauce. Coming together as 8 partners, chasing the same vision, we needed to build trust. And that trust was multi-layered. So trust in and amongst ourselves as a collaborative research partnership. So understanding what we want to achieve, agreeing on a question that makes sense for all of us within those different contexts, and then designing a research agenda that essentially answers that question from the perspectives of the locals in those different countries. But then trust had to go beyond the partnership to go into the study areas. And for that, what we did was to ensure that each and every partner was really leveraging on the trust that they'd already built with the communities. So we were not really deploying a research into new areas, but rather each partner went into a place or a constituency where they already had those relationships, where they had already invested, where they already have the necessary connections to be able to layer this research over and above that work. So our question was really focused on trying to understand what are some of the innovative ways in which educators are delivering climate education. But at the same time, we wanted to understand what are some of the ways that adolescents and youths themselves learn about climate education. It was interesting to see your statistics, Nancy, that climate awareness was on the lower side in terms of some of the skills that that the youths require. But essentially, that was the drive, understanding how climate education is delivered, but also then understanding from the adolescents and youths themselves, what are some of the ways in which they are learning about climate change, that they would like to learn about climate change, and how are they already acting as agents of change, and what could be some of those enablers for them to do that. And then finally, maybe let me just add that another sort of secret recipe was around establishing a structure for collective ownership. So what we did was to also create a regional advisory group, which included one member from each of the partner organizations who were not directly involved in the research. So they served as our accountability partner, our accountability, soundboard. And that really helped to then, bring that collective accountability and ownership in the research from the get-go. And so I think as a collaborative research really does require trust, accountability, governance, and just that shared ownership and shared ability to design, a research agenda that answers the questions that are contextually relevant. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Last but not least, Mohammed, what's the secret sauce, the pili pili?
The pilipili from this kachumbari, it's supposed to be in inviting the youth within the whole roadmap of the journey of the research. starting from the co-designing structure with them, with the methodology, as well as working with them through the different part of the process of the collecting the information regarding to the research and everything. And this is much something which is very important. It's because it's also built an environment whereby everyone felt like they have been listened to, they've also been involved, and especially if you're working in a research that's related to youth, and not only disseminating results which youth themselves now feel part of the research about themselves. So when you involve them in such a way, or in such a process of starting from the designing, co-designing of the study itself, gives them ownership and understanding the importance of what really matters within that result of that research. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So just a recap of some of the pili-pili, the words that you heard: co-design, trust building, investing in relationships, building a shared vision, consensus, centering youth, regional advisory and collaboration, and listening, and really echoing what Fode said earlier, and listening. So on that note, I'm going to jump into young people and how do young people fit into collaborative research. You heard from Nancy and Valeria and Fode about young people and the importance of that. You heard about collaboration across countries from Dr. Maurice and from Joyce. You heard about collaboration between civil society organizations and institutions and government institutions, types of institutions. And we're also going to dig in now about within communities and with youth, and what does that mean to collaborate with youth. So I'm going to ask Ellen and Mohammed to talk a little bit about youth and children are often the subjects of research. We study youth, but how do we do better at collaborating with youth? And you heard a little bit about that this morning, some suggestions. But I know, Ellen and Mohammed, you have been doing deep work with youth, doing youth-centered research. What have you learned, and what can we do better as adults working intergenerationally with young people in research? So I'm going to start with Alan and then go to Mohammed.
Thanks, Emily. I think involving youths and adolescents meaningfully is at the center of a lot of the work that we do, that we should do. Let me hasten to say it's not always the easiest of things to do, but it is possible. So as researchers, I think one of the most important processes is ensuring that we are following, ethical procedures, issues around consent. And what happens is most of the time that consent really is limited to the adults around the children. So I think one of the most important things to factor in, particularly when you look at working with adolescents and youth, is to ensure that that ethical process also reaches the child. So even if my parent has said, it's okay for me to participate in this research, I should also get that opportunity to decide for myself whether I want to be part of the research or not. So we are really making sure that in addition to parental and guardian consent, we also add that extra layer of the adolescent assent or the youth, consent, so that they themselves are deciding for themselves whether they want to be part of this, whether they want to contribute to this. Another important piece is to ensure that we are also working with adolescent or youth centered tools. How do we ensure that we are designing tools that put the tools squarely in the hands of the adolescents and the youths themselves? And for many of you, you will know that some of these tools will include photo voice. They include video. They also include, taking videos themselves. One of the things that I did actually as part of my PhD study was to use drawings. I used drawings as a way of helping adolescent girls to talk about climate change, and for them to can you draw something that shows the future that you're envisioning, that still enables you to attend school, stay in school, and be successful, even in the face of a climate crisis. And one of the challenges I faced was I didn't anticipate even maybe the challenges that I would face in decoding some of those drawings. And so one of the most important thing is to then include the adolescents and the youth themselves as co-analysts, to say, okay, this is your drawing, but what is it communicating? What is it saying? And they're able to take you through that and to really share what their perspectives are. So I think it's really important to think deeply and broadly about what some of those research processes that we've always taken for granted, like what do they mean at the level of an adolescent, at the level of the youth, and to distill that and ensure that our research tools, particularly in collaborative research, are adolescent and youth friendly, but that as a collaborative, we're understanding that and to ensure that there's the training that is necessary to enable collaborative researchers to then deploy and use those tools on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mohammed, please share your thoughts.
Okay. If I wanted to, I'm trying to imagine, I'll remember a lot of things what really happened when we were doing youth research. So the methodology started sitting with them, designing the research itself. And then we had a lot of mentors, other people like Emily and others, to train those youth how to do a lot of things, because they don't have much experience in those kind of areas, and to make sure that it follows the ethical consideration and other things. And when we were doing those kind of discussion and everything, there were a lot of things, a lot of ideas the youth were raising based on what they see in terms of working with other youth. So there were changes of a lot of question regarding to how they're supposed to be asked. Also, other areas that the youth are supposed to be doing a lot of things regarding to having the critical information from other youth. So in the end, we had a very better result, because we had engaged and put youth in the center regarding on working with other youth. I remember when we were working with different kind of school that we were collecting information. So there were youth also collecting information, like the data collectors. So it was like kind of interactive discussion one youth is having with another youth, understanding the importance of how things are. So it was easy for other youth themselves to start asking a lot of questions. Why are we doing this kind of research in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4? So there's kind of issues sometimes happen within our family. For example, your dad can tell you something like you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, but you cannot argue. Or sometimes you can even involve youth in kind of research that they feel like they've been just a subject to that research and not been involved before. But when you involve youth in terms of many different kind of areas that youth are involved, so other youth, they feel comfortable in terms of understanding and then asking a lot of questions and give you a better result in terms of what they're supposed to be revealing out. But in the end, the kind of message, the key that youth most of the time they tend to give us is they don't want to take other people's position or chairs in terms of other things, but they want to also to be involved, engaged, as well as their voice to be listened. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to summarize a little bit, some of the things we heard, really thinking carefully, intentionally about the ethics and giving young people the right to assent and want to be in research, co-designing, thinking through that very carefully. I'll add to that, Mohammed and I have learned, really you have to design with different groups in mind, boys, girls. Sometimes you ask differently, you measure differently, you sit differently with students with disabilities, but you really have to do that intentional work. And then something that Ellen pointed out too is just how do we translate this research so that it's for different audiences. Often we write our final reports for decision makers and people at the top of the chain, but we also need to share it back with communities to help young people see that they are owning the research, that they can use the research, and making sure that we translate it in ways that decision makers understand and value the stories. And finally, the methodologies, thinking outside of the box, as Ellen mentioned, using photo voice, tapping into creativity to tell stories. We've been using theater in Zanzibar for young people to write their stories, to tell their stories, perform their stories. And so thinking outside the box. Okay, we are now going to shift and hear a little bit from Nancy and Ellen on, so How do we do more of this collaborative research? How do we get funders? How do we get decision makers? How do we get advocacy power in the area of research to get more collaborative research? When I asked each of the colleagues what percentage of the research that they engage with is collaborative, they said usually 20 to 25. We need to expand that, as we all know today in this room, that the power of what that tells us and how we can do better at designing inclusive education systems, making them meaningful with youth, with young people, with families, with teachers, is important. So how do we get more of that? How do we advocate as a community for more of that? And we're going to start with Nancy to hear your wisdom.
Thank you. So one of the key things that I'd like to share is we have a lot of research that's been done, and just speaking from the NEST perspective is we've generated a lot of research that we've actually published, and we've had in-country research reports that are out there, and we're happy to share the link so that you can engage with these reports. So one of the ways we'd want the funders and those who are in advocacy to support these is to amplify by creating a visibility for the work that's been done. And we've experienced that. We've actually been living that we've been making a lot of noise with all the reports that we have been able to generate, and they're out there. We've been sharing in our local context, but then again we've also shared with the world. The other way is to fund African researchers and consortiums. We have great researchers in Africa, and the opportunity is there to fund them. But the final thing is we are the ones who live in this context. We understand the people, we understand the challenges, we experience better, and would want to shape the agenda. So would want autonomy to do that, would want to do it our way. The methodologies that have just been shared, just reflecting on what has been shared right now, is these are methodologies that work for us. They are those that we know that exist that will not work here, for example. So having that autonomy to actually do so, to define the agenda, to actually define how we are going to collect that data, who will be involved, and having the full control, because we understand our context much better. Yeah.
Thanks, Emily. Maybe let me say that one of the things that I've learned from the Center for Universal Education is really the strength that comes with collaborative research. The way that you can leverage strengths, networks, relationship, experiences across partners, across countries, that is amazing. And so for me, you know, the advocacy should really about how do we encourage investors. I'd rather not call them funders. Funders feels like you're throwing money at someone, but investing is collaborative. You're investing in an opportunity to continue to dig deep into the issues that are important, that will help to move the needle around education systems. And so I would really advocate for continued investment in collaborative research, but also with a spin that enables flexible timelines. Flexible timelines, I think earlier on we're hearing about listening and the importance of really spending time with the communities, understanding their context and the issues that they're facing. And so flexibility in terms of timelines is also very important, so that listening piece is really strengthened. But I think Nancy already mentioned one of my points around putting the power and the strength into the researchers that are in the context. And I think this is what the Brookings Institution is very good at. So they've really, seen the value of placing the power of research, individually, but also collaboratively in the hands of the champions, the education champions and the researchers who are sitting in those contexts, because we already understand that context. But I'm also thinking, how can we challenge beyond working with institutions such as Brookings? How can we challenge local investment? How do we talk to the private sector to begin to have an interest in these kinds of issues? How do we talk to the mining sector? How do we talk to the energy sector? How do we talk to local philanthropists who can be part of this movement by investing in a future that belongs to them and their children? So I think that's important. And then lastly, obviously, coming from education and climate, I'll just put a plug that I think climate as an intersection with education is not well funded. And I think it's something that, investors also need to think about and to see why this is worth funding. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you. And I'm going to add just persistence. I can say from having done this work, and I lead with teams here, 16 country, 6-continent collaboration on family engagement research for the last five years. And with the work that I've been doing, and having been based in a Ministry of Education for over 6 years, I know that it's so important to have quantitative data. Policy and decision makers need that quantitative data. And Mohammed and I have been tracking this quantitative data, the what pushes young people out of school. But we need the and. We need collaboration to tell the how and the why. For us, it's the how and the why, and you can't do that without collaboration. And so I think advocating, but persistence and understanding decision makers need the quantitative, but they need also the stories, the qualitative, that this is really important together, and we have to do that through collaboration. Okay, we have only a few minutes, so I'm going to ask very quickly in a lightning round of 30 seconds to 1 minute tops. Mohammed, Nancy, Ellen, tell us, what is one parting advice that you have for us on collaborative research? One very brief point, starting with Mohammed, going to Nancy, and then Ellen.
I would like to advise that kidole kimoja hakivunji chawa. So the more you collaborate with others, the better you have a better concrete of evident information. Thank you.
It's okay. For me, my advice would be leverage existing relationships, and that's what we did in our communities and the schools and the county governments that we work with, and that is what has enabled the success of what we are learning at the network level to also just go down to the communities that you're working with. Yeah.
And for me, it's about the trust building at different levels, trust within the collaborative partnership, trust with stakeholders, and then more importantly, trust with the communities where we are conducting the research.
Amazing. So here you have it. So many great ideas. So trust, building collaboration, the kidole kimoja. You have also just, it takes work. It takes work to work across time zones, institutions, ways of working, knowledge, powers, different age groups. And now with AI and technology complicating things and making things complicated and exciting all at once, we have to keep thinking and reinventing. So it takes reinvention. And so I encourage you today to engage in conversations, share your experiences, your knowledge, your challenges with each other, because it's going to take a community to keep collaborative research strong and to keep advocating for this. So thank you for joining us. I'm going to say thank you, Asanteni Wodik, that are online. We are going to say goodbye to you online, and we will start our series of workshops later, but I'm going to first invite you to keep seated. And we're going to invite our colleague Joyce to come to the stage and to share with us what happens next. What is our next agenda for today? But I want to thank again, just a round of applause to Ella, Nancy, and to Mohammed for sharing what works, their secret sauce, and the pili pili of collaborative research. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily, Ellen, Chigwanda, Nancy Gikandi, and Mohammed, for your time and generosity in sharing your secret sauce to collaborative research. That was, I think, a very good and fantastic start to our conversation. So please join me in giving another round of applause to the team. I think I'm informed that the videos